a boxer, and a professional thief hunted down by Al Pacino. Few actors can match the near 60-year film career Robert De Niro had, whose career rivals that of the most legendary actors. His streak in the 70s marked one of the greatest breakthrough decades in film history, featuring roles most actors would dream of securing even once in their lifetime. Recently, De Niro has taken to lighter roles, but no one could judge him too harshly after decades of intense performances. Like Marlon Brando before him, De Niro immersed himself deeply in method acting, truly embodying the character on and off screen. He drove taxis for 15-hour shifts, paid to get his teeth ruined, and even gained 60 pounds or 27 kilograms for his roles. So we'll be exploring his entire career, focusing on his 3 most impactful decades and delving into all the moments where he truly lost himself in roles. With a portfolio of over 100 films, we aim to highlight the peaks of De Niro's career without overlooking the occasional lows. Born to 2 painters in New York City in 1943, with his father being Irish-Italian, De Niro discovered his passion for acting at the age of 10 after portraying the Cowardly Lion in a school production of Wizard of Oz. He attended the High School of Music and Arts in the 9th grade and then moved from school to school before dropping out at 16 to pursue his love for cinema. He studied under Stella Adler from ages 18 to 21, learning the Stanislavski system art of experiencing. Adler also taught Marlon Brando, who was most influential on De Niro's approach to acting. De Niro's early career in the mid to late 60s consisted of minor film roles until he landed his first significant role in Brian De Palma's Greetings in 1968, where he played one of the 3 men dodging the Vietnam draft. The film was well received, marking the beginning of De Niro's collaborations with De Palma. He continued the decade with a role in Sam's Song and later reunited with De Palma in The Wedding Party. He started the 70s by appearing in Bloody Mama and again with De Palma in Hi Mom, a sequel to Greetings. His performances so far, particularly the De Palma comedies, hinted at his knack for portraying complex, offbeat characters. However, 1973 was a pivotal year for De Niro. He starred in Bang the Drum Slowly, portraying a baseball player with Hodgkin's disease, a role that garnered him a lot of praise. But it was Mean Streets, directed by Martin Scorsese, that truly cemented his status in the film industry. As Johnny Boy, a reckless young criminal, De Niro showcased his profound ability to embody deeply flawed characters, earning him comparisons to some of Dustin Hoffman's earlier performances.
Everybody, I never paid him back, so I can't borrow no money from nobody no more, right?
This film kicked off one of cinema's most iconic partnerships with Scorsese, marking the beginning of a new era for De Niro, whose preparation for the role involved isolating himself to better portray his character's outsider status. The film was a critical success, setting the stage for De Niro to really take things up a notch with his next film. But here at Filmstack, we're always trying to take it up a notch. And one way we've been able to do that is by using Opera. Opera is a free browser that is packed with features that ensure I have a safe and secure browsing experience while also increasing my productivity. I want to highlight just a few of the features that make me love using Opera. Opera has an amazing browser AI called Arya that helps us here at Filmstack make our videos better. When doing research for this video, Arya helped us find some of De Niro's method acting stories we never heard of before. It also helped us fact check the information we included in our script. Arya is easily accessible from the sidebar and can give you clear answers to your questions instantly. It can help compose content of different types, style, and length, and it also allows you to highlight any text to get a brief description, explore the topic more, or provide a translation. Another great feature is Opera's tab islands. As a YouTuber, I have so many tabs open almost all the time because I'm finding clips or images or just doing research in general, and Opera's tab islands help me stay organized by grouping tabs based on their context. And oh my, let's talk about Opera's workspaces feature. I'm not just a YouTuber. I also have a full-time job that requires me to use my browser constantly, and sometimes I just want to relax and browse things when I'm at home. Opera's workspaces allow me to stay organized. When I need to focus on YouTube, I switch to my YouTube workspace. When I'm working, I'll switch my workspace again. And this is just a short list of all the features. They also have a built-in ad blocker, a VPN, and so much more. And the best part is that you can get all these features by downloading Opera for free. Just click the link in the description. But in 1976, De Niro took method acting to the extreme, teaming up with Scorsese again for Taxi Driver, where he played Travis Bickle, a mentally unstable Vietnam War veteran who is now a New York City cab driver. So how did he prepare? By driving a taxi, of course. De Niro actually drove a taxi for 15-hour shifts for a whole month, only being recognized once despite recently winning an Oscar. And his dedication didn't stop in New York City. While filming 1900 in Italy, he would fly back to drive cabs during production breaks. He even recorded conversations at a US Army base to master a Midwestern accent and lost 35 pounds. On top of all of this, he extensively studied mental illnesses, listened to the diaries of criminal Arthur Bremer on repeat, studied the behavior of taxi drivers, took firearm training, and apparently stayed in character throughout production. All of this culminated in one of the best performances and some of the most iconic lines in film, like the whole mirror monologue where he improvised the lines.
You talking to me?
For his efforts, he received an Oscar nomination and the film was a hit all across the board, making it 2 for 2 for the De Niro-Scorsese collabs. 1976 was a busy year for De Niro. Besides Taxi Driver, he starred in the Italian epic 1900 as a wealthy landowner and in The Last Tycoon playing a young film producer. Though 1900 was well received, both films struggled at the box office. De Niro's method acting continued in The Last Tycoon, with reports of him rehearsing even on Sundays and being very meticulous in how he portrayed his character. And the following year, he had his third collab with Scorsese, New York, New York, where he played a saxophonist alongside Liza Minnelli. For the role, De Niro spent 3 months learning to play the saxophone even though it was eventually overdubbed. But did the Scorsese-De Niro duo go 3 for 3 with this film? No. It didn't fare well with critics or at the box office, with some criticism going towards De Niro for his character being very underdeveloped. He still got a Golden Globe nomination for it though. Unfortunately, Scorsese had a worse reaction to the criticism, falling into depression and worsening his drug addiction. He really needed some convincing to get him back into filmmaking, but more on this later. But De Niro ended the 1970s on a high note with Michael Cimino's The Deer Hunter. In the film, De Niro portrays one of the 3 working-class friends who enlist in the Vietnam War, starring alongside Christopher Walken, John Cazale, and John Savage. De Niro has described this role as the most physically exhausting of his career, with the shoot going both over budget and over schedule, often due to Cimino's insistence on multiple retakes. In one notably demanding scene, De Niro and Savage had to fall 30 feet from a helicopter into a river, performing the stunt themselves under Cimino's direction, who required 15 takes over 2 days to capture the perfect shot. De Niro, as always, took preparation for the role very seriously. He spent a lot of time speaking with steelworkers to better understand his character. And to make things feel more real and heighten the anxiety on set, De Niro suggested using live cartridges in the revolver for the Russian roulette scene. Apparently, Cazale was always checking the weapon between takes, but this seems a bit too over the top and unnecessary, probably just PR to hype the movie up. The film ended up being very successful despite its controversial subject matter. De Niro, nominated for Best Actor, even skipped out on the Oscars because he was anxious that the film's controversy would cause problems at the ceremony. The film went on to win 5 Oscars, including Best Picture. Robert De Niro kicked off the 80s with what many consider to be his all-time best performance in Raging Bull, marking his 4th collaboration with Martin Scorsese. This passion project of his was challenging to get off the ground. De Niro, who was inspired after reading the autobiography of Jake LaMotta, the Italian-American boxer he portrays, was frequently seen with the book on the set of New York, New York, likely nudging Scorsese towards the project. Following the commercial flop of New York, New York and Scorsese's hospitalization after a near overdose, De Niro visited him and persuaded him to tackle Raging Bull, rather than moving to Europe to make smaller films. The duo brought their A game. De Niro trained with the real LaMotta for months, even entering Brooklyn boxing matches to authentically capture the boxer's gritty essence. He also lived with Joe Pesci, who played his brother in the film, to foster a genuine sense of brotherhood. However, the most extreme commitment De Niro made for this role was gaining 60 pounds to portray the older LaMotta, setting a record at the time. He spent months in Europe eating lots of pasta and milkshakes, scaring Scorsese when he finally showed up to set with his new weight. And although not a commercial hit, the film was a critical success, cementing Scorsese as one of the era's most significant filmmakers, a much needed boost in confidence. And De Niro won the Best Actor Oscar for his intense and near-perfect performance.
What about the weight?
You worried about the weight? What are we arguing about for? I just said the weight.
He then had to lose as much weight as possible to star in 1981's True Confessions, where he played a priest whose brother was investigating a murder. The film received fairly good reviews, but was a much tamer performance than his last. It wasn't long before he teamed up with Scorsese for the 5th time in 1982's The King of Comedy, where he played Rupert Pupkin, an aspiring comedian with stalker tendencies. This role marked a significant departure for De Niro, and he branched out from his typical characters more often this decade. It even became Scorsese's favorite De Niro performance.
I can take care of that right away. Just tell me the ones you don't like, and no problem. Actually, that's a great help. This is great.
To prepare for the role of the comedian, De Niro spent months studying Richard Belzer and other comedians' stand-up acts to capture the rhythm and timing. However, to delve into the stalker side of his character, he engaged in reverse stalking by approaching his own stalkers, asking them questions, and even meeting with one of his longtime stalkers. Although both the film and De Niro's performance were well received, it bombed spectacularly at the box office, perhaps due to its bleak and cynical tone, which may have been too much for audiences at the time. De Niro's box office struggles continued with his next film in 1984, Sergio Leone's Jewish gangster epic Once Upon a Time in America. De Niro delivered one of the standout performances, but there wasn't much drama behind the scenes except for his unsuccessful request for a private meeting with the renowned crime boss Meyer Lansky. The film flopped because its original cut, which was adored by critics and ran over 4 hours, was drastically condensed to 2 hours and 19 minutes for US theaters, a version that critics hated. The remainder of the decade saw inconsistent uses of his method acting. There were some seemingly pointless requests, such as having business cards made for his character in 1984's Falling in Love, cards that never even appeared on film, or in 1987's The Untouchables, where he reunited with De Palma to play Al Capone and even had Capone's original tailors recreate the gangster's suits and silk underwear. His intense method acting started to irritate others, an example being in 1985 during the filming of Terry Gilliam's Brazil. Initially, everyone was excited to have De Niro on board, but his obsession with preparing for roles and meticulously researching every detail frustrated Gilliam, so much so that he reportedly wanted to strangle him. De Niro also often forgot his lines, needing 25 to 30 takes to get a scene right, whereas most other actors only needed 2 to 3. Tensions also escalated during the filming of 1987's Angel Heart, which sparked a feud between De Niro and Mickey Rourke because De Niro refused to talk to Rourke on set, believing it would enhance their scenes, but Rourke took it personally. Overall, despite becoming an established lead actor, almost every film De Niro appeared in during this decade flopped at the box office. The only 2 major hits came towards the end with The Untouchables and Midnight Run, where he played a bounty hunter with a performance that is beloved by many. He experimented much more this decade with roles ranging from boxers to aspiring comedians to heating engineers to 18th century mercenaries. Despite the variety, almost all films reviewed well, with his performance often being central to the praise. However, some of his most iconic performances were yet to come in the following decade. Goodfellas, the 6th collaboration between De Niro and Scorsese, and one of our favorite films here at Filmstack. There's not much we can say that hasn't already been said about the film, but upon rewatching it recently, I just loved every scene. The film follows the true story of Henry Hill, a young gangster who climbs the ranks of a mafia family with the help of Jimmy Conway, played by De Niro. For this role, De Niro took preparation to yet another level. He would call the real Henry Hill 7 to 8 times a day, inquiring about how the real Jimmy Burke, conducted himself. Initially, it was about general behavioral things to get his character right, but then it became incredibly specific, like how the real Jimmy walked, how he held his cigarette, and even how he applied his ketchup. The end result was a very lovable and charismatic performance, although honestly, I probably wouldn't have noticed if he applied his ketchup the wrong way. De Niro didn't receive an Oscar nomination, but his co-star Joe Pesci, who delivered the most memorable performance, won an Oscar. Critics adored the film, but it's surprising to see that it only did good enough at the box office. That same year, De Niro starred alongside Robin Williams in Awakenings, playing a patient who received a controversial cure for encephalitis lethargica and experiences an awakening. Both leads prepared by spending time with the neurologist Oliver Sacks, upon whom the story is based on. The film did well enough and earned De Niro his first Oscar nomination in 10 years. But the wait for his next nomination wouldn't be as long. In 1991, De Niro portrayed a film director in Guilty by Suspicion, which flopped, and also played a smaller role as a fire inspector in Backdraft before reuniting with Scorsese for their 7th collaboration in Cape Fear. Here, he played Max Cady, a psychotic rapist seeking vengeance on his attorney who withheld evidence that could have acquitted him. To physically prepare, De Niro bulked up, got tattoos with vegetable dye, and paid a dentist $5,000 to degrade his teeth for the role, which cost him $20,000 to restore after filming. He immersed himself in the psychology of sexual predators and even recorded local dialects in southern towns to perfect his character's accent.
Free as a bird, apparently. You go everywhere you want with whomever. That much freedom could maybe get a felon into trouble.
De Niro's chilling performance helped make Cape Fear the duo's most successful film by a large margin, earning him another Oscar nomination. But this was De Niro's last case of extreme commitment to a role. He still continued to prepare thoroughly for his parts, though the roles became tamer and he was often typecast, with studios capitalizing on his fame. He had a notable appearance alongside Bill Murray in 1993's Mad Dog and Glory despite its box office failure. In This Boy's Life, he starred with Leonardo DiCaprio, who would later replace him to become Scorsese's regular collaborator. 1993 also marked De Niro's directorial debut with A Bronx Tale, a coming-of-age mafia film where, surprisingly, he did not play one of the gangsters in the film. While it had an okay box office performance, critics praised De Niro's direction. He tackled the role of Frankenstein in 1994 before starring in 2 iconic films in 1995, Casino and Heat. In Casino, his 8th film with Scorsese, De Niro played Sam Ace Rothstein, a casino boss with mob connections. A cool fact about the film is that much of the dialogue between him and Pesci was improvised, based only on cues on how to start and end their conversation. The film performed well at the box office, though it didn't receive as glowing reviews as Goodfellas. But De Niro kept his method acting up for the film, even catching an earful from Don Rickles for forgetting his lines.
Learn the thing, you gotta pop out trailer. Sit in there and study.
In Michael Mann's Heat, De Niro and Al Pacino were on screen together for the first time, despite both appearing in The Godfather Part 2. De Niro played Neil McCauley, a master thief hunted by a detective played by Pacino. Mann had De Niro and the other actors meet career criminals to prepare for their roles. The film was a huge hit with De Niro at his coolest, Mann at his best, and Pacino delivering one of his best lines. Many regard 1995 as the last great year of De Niro's career. He remained prolific, starring in 2 to 3 films annually. His most notable roles for the remainder of the decade included reuniting with DiCaprio in Marvin's Room, playing an investigator in Copland, and appearing in Tarantino's Jackie Brown. He also starred in the political satire Wag the Dog and played a mercenary in Ronin. And while he ventured into comedy and safer thrillers, he continued to land tough guy and mafia roles like in 1999's Analyze This, where he played a mob boss in Therapy, a plot that seems a little familiar. Although the film was successful and earned him a Golden Globe nomination, De Niro would soon move towards cheap sequels and cash grab roles, with his worst decade coming up next. If you think we're exaggerating how much De Niro's career declined this decade, just look at what he opened the millennium with. The Adventures of Rocky and Bullwinkle, a film he admittedly did just for the money. However, not everything was terrible that decade. That same year, he starred in Meet the Parents as Ben Stiller's girlfriend's father, a role in a classic 2000s comedy where De Niro avoided Stiller on set to mimic the distance between their characters. The film was a hit all around, becoming his highest grossing film to that point. The following year, he appeared in Marlon Brando's final film, The Score, which received positive reviews despite all the problems Brando caused on set. But almost everything else this decade was brutal. Shark Tale had its moments and could be considered a Scorsese-De Niro collaboration, and 2007's Stardust was good, although receiving mid-box office numbers. Yet everything else was torn apart by critics. Analyze That, a bad sequel to Analyze This. Meet the Fockers, an okay sequel to Meet the Parents. Whatever Godsend was, and the disappointing reunion with Al Pacino in Righteous Kill, which even they later admitted to not being proud of. Even his second attempt at directing with 2006's The Good Shepherd, a spy film starring Matt Damon, did not go well. Although the paychecks kept coming, his career was falling apart. However, he was going to experience a late career resurgence in the following decade. Well, sort of. After the disastrous decade he just endured, if you told me his 2010s would include Limitless, Silver Linings Playbook, American Hustle, The Intern, The Irishman, and Joker, I'd have called it one of the best recent actor comebacks. Yet only 2 of those roles were leads and 2 were very minor. The truth is, the decade was again filled with mediocrity amidst all those hits. In 2012, he starred in Silver Linings Playbook, playing the father whose son moves back in with them after being released from a psychiatric hospital. His performance earned him a Best Supporting Actor nomination, his first Oscar nod in 21 years. But he also did Little Fockers, New Year's Eve, and Red Lights before getting there. In 2013, he had a very memorable cameo in American Hustle, but somehow he also starred in 5 films that same year, all critical flops, with 2 doing well enough at the box office. The Intern was a fun watch, but then he followed it up a year later with Dirty Grandpa, which a critic described as not just the worst movie De Niro has ever been in, but it may be the worst movie anyone has ever been in. At this point in his career, behind-the-scenes stories are few and far between. The only notable tidbit I could find is that for this film's poster, he lifted Zac Efron on his back without any help. But that late career resurgence I mentioned began in 2017 with the TV film The Wizard of Lies, where he plays Bernie Madoff, the mastermind behind the largest known Ponzi scheme. The film received pretty good reviews and his performance earned him Golden Globe and Emmy nominations. In 2019, we finally saw his 9th feature film collaboration with Scorsese, The Irishman. Starring alongside Pesci and Pacino, the film revolves around the mafia's dealings with Teamster Jimmy Hoffa. It was a very expensive Netflix film, especially because of the de-aging technology used on the leads, which kind of worked, except that in some of the younger De Niro scenes you can clearly tell it's an older man acting. Despite those issues, the film was a major hit with critics and earned De Niro an Oscar nomination as a producer. That same year, he had a small supporting role in Joker, being in the film's most memorable scene. And in 2023, De Niro starred in his 10th Scorsese collaboration, Killers of the Flower Moon, this time alongside Scorsese's other frequent collaborator, DiCaprio. The film, set during the 1920s Osage murders in Oklahoma and based on a true story and book, showcased De Niro's best performance in decades.
It's so simple. The front is the front, the back is the back.
Earning him another Oscar nomination for a supporting role. It really makes you wonder how many great performances we missed out on if he had taken his career more seriously in the last 2 decades and tried as hard as he did here. But going all out for a role is very demanding. You can't drive a taxi for months, gain 60 pounds, learn every detail to become the character and stalk your stalkers for every role, especially not at the age of 80. But no one is asking him to. It's like what Laurence Olivier said to Dustin Hoffman about his method acting antics. Why don't you try acting? The best he can do at this age is to try, like he did in Killers of the Flower Moon and what he has been doing these last few years. It'll be interesting to see where his career goes from here, whether he'll continue to try or go back to taking it easy, but the man has definitely earned a break either way. So there you have it, Robert De Niro's legendary career and all his most dedicated moments. Do you think he had the best film career? Share your thoughts below. If you enjoyed the video, drop a like and subscribe and check out our Patreon for some cool perks. But until next time, have a good one.